It is a Tuesday afternoon, and you are standing in the checkout line at the grocery store watching the numbers climb on that little screen. 1 bag of potatoes, a few cans of beans, some onions, a head of cabbage, nothing fancy, and the total still makes you wince. You have tried the coupons, you have tried the store brands, you have tried simply buying less, and every month the same cart costs a little more than it did the month before. But 3 miles from my house down a gravel road in rural Ohio, there are families who barely feel any of it. My Amish neighbors grow almost everything they eat, and they do it with 8 crops that you can grow in an ordinary backyard. Today, I am going to walk you through all 8, why each one earned its place at their table, and exactly how to grow and keep every single one of them. And stay with me to the end, because number 8 is a crop you will almost never see on an Amish dinner table. They plant more of it than nearly anything else in the garden, and the reason why is the whole difference between a garden that gets a family through a hard year and one that does not. I'm Bill, though most folks online know me as Backyard Bill. I've spent 30 years learning hard lessons on a little piece of land in rural Ohio, right alongside an Amish settlement. For too many of those years, I fought my garden with a rototiller and a shelf of chemicals I could not pronounce, and I lost. Most of what I am about to share I learned from my friend and neighbor Daniel, watching how his family's garden feeds them year after year, no matter what the world is doing. Now, folks talk a lot these days about food shortages and what might be coming. I'm not going to stand here and predict the future because I do not know it, and neither does anybody who is selling panic. What I do know is what we all watched in 2020, when grocery store shelves in every town in America sat empty for weeks. And I know what we have all watched since, a grocery bill that climbs every single year. Through all of it, my neighbors across the fence never worried much because their food does not come from a truck. It comes from the garden, the field, and the cellar. Here is what I learned from my Amish neighbors about choosing what to grow. Every crop in their garden has to pass 3 tests. It has to feed you real calories, not just salad. It has to keep for months without a freezer or a single watt of electricity. And it has to give back the seed to plant it again next spring for free. Every one of the 8 crops on this list passes all 3 of those tests, and number 8 passes a 4th test all its own, one that none of the others can touch. I promise we will get there, but before we dig into crop number 1, give me 1 minute to tell you where the whole system behind this comes from. Everything I'm about to show you sits on top of one system, the one my neighbors use to make sure the pests do not take the harvest before the family does. And I wrote that whole system down in a book called The 30-Day Amish Pest-Proof Garden Protocol. It is 117 pages, written by me, laid out as a simple 30-day plan any home gardener can follow week by week, starting with week 1, kill nothing, build everything, all the way through week 4, the self-defending garden. It also covers the deeper skills that go hand in hand with the 8 crops in this video: seed saving, hand tools, and preserving the harvest, plus a common pest field guide, and your first full season laid out month by month. The book costs $17, marked down from $47. That is $17 one time against a shelf of sprays you have to buy again every single season. Now go ahead and grab your phone and open up your camera, the same one you use to take pictures. Point it at that square code on your screen and hold it steady for a second. A little link will pop up. Give it a tap and it will take you straight to the book. And if you are watching on your phone right now, the link is waiting for you right down below in the description. Take your time. There is no rush at all. I'll wait right here. All right, let's get our hands in the dirt. Number 1, potatoes Walk past any Amish farm garden in Ohio in June and you will see them, long straight rows of potato plants, more than any other single vegetable. There is a plain reason for that. No common garden crop gives you more calories per square foot of soil than the potato. A 10-foot row can hand you 15 to 20 pounds of food, and a family-sized planting can carry you clear through winter. Start with certified seed potatoes from a farm store or a seed catalog, not potatoes from the grocery store, because grocery potatoes are usually treated so they will not sprout. Cut each seed potato into pieces about the size of an egg. Make sure every piece has at least 2 eyes, those little dimples where the sprouts come from. Let the cut pieces sit out for a day or two so the cut sides dry and toughen. Then plant each piece 4 inches deep and 12 inches apart. That is 4 inches deep, no deeper, or they struggle coming up. When the plants stand about 8 inches tall, pull loose soil up around the stems with a hoe until only the top few inches of leaves show. That is called hilling, and it simply means burying the stem so more potatoes can form along it. Do it once more a few weeks later. Take your time with it. There is no rush. When the vines yellow and die back in late summer, the crop is ready. Dig gently with a garden fork. Let the potatoes sit in a dark, airy place for 2 weeks so the skins toughen, and then store them somewhere cool and dark, ideally around 40 degrees. That is 40 degrees, like an old cellar or an unheated corner of the basement, and they will keep until spring. But a cellar full of potatoes will only carry a family so far, because a body needs protein too. That is exactly what the next crop is for. Number 2, dry beans. I do not mean green beans for supper tonight, though you will get plenty of those along the way. I mean beans you let dry right on the vine. Pinto beans, kidney beans, black turtle beans. Here is the quiet miracle of a dry bean. And I mean, think about this for a second. Every bean in the jar is both dinner and next year's garden. It is food and seed in the same package, which is why you will find jars of them in every Amish pantry I have ever been welcomed into. Plant them after your last frost. Once the soil feels warm to your bare hand, around 60 degrees, give each seed about 3 inches of space in the row, then mostly leave them alone, because beans actually feed themselves by pulling nitrogen right out of the air, something modern gardeners pay good money for in a bag. The important part is the harvest, and it is the part where patience pays. Do not pick the pods green. Leave them on the plant until the pods turn brown and papery and the beans rattle inside. When you shake them, that rattle is the sound of food that will keep for years. Pull the whole plants on a dry afternoon and shell the beans out on the porch in the evening, the way whole Amish families do it together in October. Store them in glass jars with tight lids in the pantry. 1 pound of seed beans in May becomes many pounds of food by fall, and a single jar held back becomes next year's whole planting. Beans and potatoes together will keep a family fed. But my neighbors also grow something that turns an ordinary pantry shelf into food storage all winter long. No cellar, no canner, no work at all. Number 3, butternut squash. There is a shelf in many an Ohio farmhouse pantry that holds nothing but tan butternut squash lined up like loaves of bread, and some of those squash will still be perfect in March. Butternut is the storage champion of the garden. Kept at ordinary room temperature around 60 degrees, a properly cured butternut keeps 6 months or more on a plain wooden shelf. No electricity, no canning jars, no freezer, and butternut earned its place with the Amish for a second reason. Its vines have solid, tough stems, so the squash vine borer, the worm that collapses so many backyard pumpkin and zucchini plants overnight, mostly leaves it alone. The plant defends itself, which is the whole idea. Plant 3 seeds together in a little mound of soil after frost, and give each mound plenty of room, 6 feet or so, because the vines wander. water at the base, not over the leaves. Then in fall, the two rules that decide everything. First, wait until the skin turns fully tan and is hard enough that your thumbnail cannot dent it. Second, when you cut each squash from the vine, leave a 2-inch piece of stem attached like a little handle. That is 2 inches of stem, and it matters because a squash that loses its stem rots from that spot. Never carry a squash by the handle either. Then let them cure, which just means sitting somewhere warm and airy for 10 days. That is 10 days. And that curing time is what hardens the skin for the long haul after that. The pantry shelf does the rest. Now squash, beans, and potatoes will fill you up. The next crop is the one that kept whole communities healthy through winter, long before anybody had a refrigerator. Number 4, cabbage. My neighbors plant cabbage twice, but the planting that matters for this list is the fall crop set out in July and August, because cabbage that matures in cool weather grows sweeter and keeps better. A solid, heavy fall cabbage will sit for a couple of months in a cold cellar just as it is. But the real reason cabbage is on this list is a wooden barrel in the corner of the basement or a row of mason jars on the counter. Sauerkraut. 2 ingredients, cabbage and salt, and thyme does the rest. The salt draws the water out of the cabbage sits under its own brine, and over a few weeks it turns into kraut that keeps for a year. Families fed themselves this way for generations before electricity, and my neighbors still do. The basic method is simple enough to try with 1 jar. Shred a 5-pound head of cabbage. Mix in 3 tablespoons of plain salt, no iodine, no anti-caking agents. That is 3 tablespoons of salt for 5 pounds of cabbage, and the ratio is the part to get right. Squeeze and press the cabbage with clean hands until it is swimming in its own juice. Pack it down into a jar so the liquid covers it completely. Weigh it down and set it somewhere cool for about 3 weeks. Anything under the brine keeps. Anything above the brine spoils, so keep it under. Take your time and check it every few days. And while your kraut is working away in the corner, remember that 8th crop I mentioned, the one that never reaches the dinner table. We're getting closer, and it is the reason all the crops before it make it to harvest at all. Number 5, carrots. Carrots pass the storage test in a way that surprises most folks, because the best storage container for a carrot is the ground it grew in. Sow a bed of carrots in July for a fall crop. Then when the cold weather comes, do not dig them all. Cover the bed with a foot of loose straw before the ground freezes hard. That is a full foot of straw piled deep. Under that blanket, the soil stays soft enough to dig, and you can walk out in January, pull back the straw, and lift fresh carrots out of the frozen garden like the ground was your refrigerator. And here is a piece of old knowledge with real science behind it. Frost makes carrots sweeter. When the temperature drops, the carrot converts its starches to sugar to protect itself. So a December carrot genuinely tastes better than a September one. The old-timers knew it long before anybody could explain it. If you would rather bring them in, there is the sand bucket method from the root cellar days. Get a 5-gallon bucket and some barely damp sand. Twist the green tops off the carrots because the tops pull moisture out of the root. Lay down a layer of sand, then a layer of carrots so they do not touch each other. Then sand, then carrots until the bucket is full. Set the bucket somewhere cold and pull carrots all winter. 1 instruction at a time, no rush, and it works as well today as it did 100 years ago. Carrots handle the sweetness. The next crop handles the flavor of nearly every meal you will cook from this whole list. Number 6, storage onions. Nearly every dish that comes out of an Amish farm kitchen starts the same way, with an onion in a cast iron pan. And the onions come out of a braid hanging from a nail, not a grocery bag. But the variety decides everything here, and this is where most gardeners go wrong. Sweet onions, the The big mild ones are eating onions and they rot within weeks. What you want are storage onions. The ordinary hard yellow ones in your seed catalog will say keeper or storage right in the description. A good keeper onion cured right hangs in the pantry for 8 months. Plant onion sets, those little marble-sized bulbs from the farm store in early spring, 2 inches apart, an inch deep. Pull them in late summer once about half the green tops have flopped over on their own. Then comes the step that decides whether they last until spring or spoil by Halloween. Curing. Lay the onions out in a single layer somewhere dry and airy, out of the rain. A covered porch is perfect for 2 to 3 weeks. That is 2 to 3 full weeks until the necks are completely dry and papery and the outer skins rustle. Then braid the tops together the old way or slip them into mesh bags and hang them somewhere cool and dry. Never store them in plastic because trapped moisture is what an onion cannot survive. So far, every crop on this list is a vegetable. The next one is a grain, and it is the one that separates a garden from a real homestead. Number 7, dent corn. Drive past the Amish farms near me in October, and you will see corn shocks standing in the fields and corn cribs filling up. But almost none of that corn is the sweet corn you and I grill in August. It is dent corn, field corn, named for the little dimple that forms in each kernel as it dries. Sweet corn is a treat that lasts a season. Dent corn is bred and it stores for years. You let it dry hard right on the stalk, harvest the ears, and store them on the cob somewhere dry with airflow. Then whenever you want cornbread or mush or polenta, you shell off some kernels and run them through a hand-crank grain mill, and there is no comparing fresh ground cornmeal to the bag from the store. 2 things to get right. First, plant corn in a block, not one long row, at least 4 rows side by side, because corn is pollinated by the wind, and a lonely single row gives you half-empty ears. Second, choose an open pollinated variety, which simply means an old-fashioned kind that breeds true, so the seed you save this year grows the same corn next year. Most modern hybrids will not do that, and that difference is precisely why the Amish stay with the old varieties. Their seed is free forever, and it belongs to them. Reef's Rainbow, Bloody Butcher, Hickory King, the old names are still in the catalogs if you look, and that makes 7 crops, every one of them food. Number 8 almost never is. It is the crop Daniel would tell you to plant before any of the others, and the reason why is the answer I promised you at the start. Number 8, buckwheat. If you visited my neighbor's farms in midsummer, you would find whole patches of it, knee-high plants covered in small white flowers, humming so loud with insects you can hear the patch before you see it. And here is what stopped me in my tracks the first time Daniel walked me through his Buckwheat goes from seed to full bloom in about 30 days. That is 30 days, seed to flower, faster than nearly anything you can plant. They scatter it on any bare ground the minute a crop comes out, and then they mow it down or turn it into the soil, and hardly a kernel of it ever reaches the table for years. That made no sense to me. Why would the most practical farmers I know spend seed and ground on a crop they do not eat? The answer is the 4th test I mentioned back at the beginning, the one only buckwheat passes. Every other crop on this list feeds the family. Buckwheat feeds the garden's defenders. Those white flowers are open, shallow, and full of nectar, which makes them a feeding station for the small beneficial insects, the tiny wasps, the hoverflies, the ladybugs, the ones whose whole job in this world is eating the pests that eat your food. Those helpers starve and scatter whenever a garden has nothing blooming. Buckwheat keeps them fed and camped in your garden all season, a standing guard over the other 7 crops, working day and night for free. And below the ground, it is doing a second job, shading out weeds so thick they give up and pulling up minerals from deep in the soil so that when you turn it under under, it feeds the beds for the crop that follows. A few dollars of seed covers a big patch, and you can grow 3 plantings in one summer on the same ground. So the reason an Amish garden comes through a hard year is not luck, and it is not some secret. It is that the soil never sits empty and the defenders never leave. Daniel put it better than I ever could. He told me you do not plant buckwheat to feed the family. You plant it to feed the ones who guard the family's food. And that is the heart of what Daniel taught me. And it is one layer of the 5 defense layers that run through everything my neighbors do. The book is the whole 30 days of it, layer by layer. The 30-day Amish Pest-Proof Garden Protocol, $17 instead of $47, 117 pages. So your garden can start defending itself this season instead of next. If these 8 crops are the food, the book is the fence around them. Now go ahead and grab your phone and open up your camera, the same one you use to take pictures. Point it at that square code on your screen and hold it steady for a second. A little link will pop up, give it a tap, and it will take you straight to the book. And if you are watching on your phone right now, the link is waiting for you right down below in the description. Take your time. There is no rush at all. I'll wait right here. So there it is. 8 crops, calories, protein, a full pantry, free seed forever, and 1 quiet guardian that never reaches the table, and that checkout line loses a little of its grip on you with every row you plant. Did your folks or your grandparents garden without chemicals? Tell me one thing they did below. Those are exactly the methods worth saving. I read every single one. Next time I'm going to show you how my neighbors keep a root cellar at 55 degrees all summer long without a single watt of electricity, and the $5 thermometer trick Daniel uses to know exactly which mornings to open the vents. Work with nature, not against it, and I'll see you in the garden.